Okay, welcome to Billy's Books. We're going to do something different. It's going to be science fiction, but it's not going to be Star Wars. No, instead, it's a classic Dune. Dune, which actually the original book came out a full 10 years before Star Wars, and it shows in the sense that Star Wars clearly ripped some of the things off, and also it's just from an earlier time. Dune is a science fiction classic that I somehow managed to not read until now. I'm only halfway through, so don't worry, I won't give away the ending. And that's the way I like to do things. Dune is a classic that most of us know from the 80s movie that was very interesting to look at, but nobody understood. And they always said, well, it doesn't make any sense by itself, but if you read the book, well, I'll tell you something. This book is pretty clear. That movie didn't have to be confusing, but it was. This book is really clear. You know exactly what's happening at all times. In fact, you might even say you know too much. It is very long. I'm not just saying it's too much, it's too long, and that therefore you know too much. But in fact, for me, one of my criticisms of this book is the way the point of view changes. Usually, I'm used to, a chapter or at least a section where each section is, you see the perspective from one person, and then maybe if you do a section break, you cut to another person's perspective. This book, you can just shift from one person to another within a page without even a section break. It'll just be like, it's kind of like that movie, what was that movie, Slacker, and there's some of those movies in the 90s where they just follow a character, and something happens, and then they sort of, and then they walk down the sidewalk, and there's another person on the sidewalk, and the camera follows them and continues. It's kind of like that with this book. Like, it'll be on one page, it'll say, and Paul Atreides, he thought this, and da-da-da-da. Then he talked to his mom, and she said this, and they cut right to her internal thoughts. To me, I found that confusing and maybe a little bit too much. You understand why you see multiple perspectives, because there's a lot of misunderstanding going on. So far, what I've been reading is the main characters are the Duke Leto and his not wife, Jessica. She is the mother to Paul Atreides, who is the heir to the throne, to the dukedom, duchy, heir to the Atreides throne. And so we see a lot of them, and she has been, among other people, has been training Paul Atreides for years. And that's another one of those influences that we see of Star Wars is the young boy being trained to such a high level that he is able to sense things that nobody else can, and develops very sophisticated understanding of the world around him, and also becomes a great leader as a result. So he's like a teenager, and things come to pass such that he suddenly has to take on a leadership role, and he just jumps right into it really quickly, and it's almost unnatural, if you will. So a lot of the people on the planet see him as a filling of a prophecy. One of the reasons this book is so slow is that it takes its time developing. So their home planet is called Caladan, which is not unlike Alderaan, and it's a paradise planet filled with oceans and greenery and just a paradise planet. But they have to leave. The Emperor says, nope, you're going to Arrakis, aka Dune, which is a desert planet, obviously, which is where most of it happens. But the beginning of the book, we're still on their paradise planet, and Paul is still being trained, and he has a little chat with his dad. How could you win the loyalty of such men? There are proven ways. Play on the certain knowledge of their superiority, the mystique of secret covenant, the esprit of shared suffering. It can be done. It has been done on many worlds in many times. So that's a little bit of Machiavellianism there for you. One other tidbit his dad had for him in that quote was, Gurney says there's no artistry in killing with the tip, that it should be done with the edge. To which Dad says, Gurney's a romantic. And then this talk of killing suddenly disturbed him, coming from his son. I'd sooner you never have to kill, but if the need arises, you do it however you can, tip or edge. So there you go. I think that sums up a lot about this book. Some other interesting things culturally, because they're coming from a paradise planet to a desert planet. They had grown up taking water for granted, like we do on Earth for the most part, even though we have paradise and desert on our planet, because most planets have more than one environment. Anyway, so but there's almost no water on Dune, and so people they have these really sophisticated suits and everything like that to keep a pressure in, and even they keep your sweat in, and they, after they build up in pockets and you suck it back in. It's very the opposite of Waterworld, if you will. Anyway, so there's some cultural differences. So when the Atreides clan first arrives, they have some talk with some locals, and they're like, "We're building a bond here." And at one point, the at the end of the conversation, one of the locals goes up to the boardroom table and just spits on it, and all the people from the Paradise Planet are like, "Oh!" They get their swords out, and no, no, no. And of course, the Duke was like, "No, no, chill out," because what happens is when they spit on the table, they're actually offering that's their life, because water is life, and even a little bit of spit on a table is a big sacrifice and a symbolic gesture. Our water is your water. Well, one of the big themes of this book is about controlling resources, natural resources. So there's not enough water, and the main industry for this planet is spice. You'll also recall that Han Solo was a spice smuggler. Spice is the dangerous word. So they have spice, and in fact, it actually changes if you live with the spice long enough, it actually changes your whole body, the way your body works, and people become addicted just by living on there. In fact, Paul and Jessica, they discovered that they themselves have become addicted to the spice, and therefore they are trapped on the planet. And that sounds like a rather big metaphor, being addicted to the drug trade or addicted to crime, and you're stuck there. Keep dragging me back in. It's like that. It's hard to follow all the different parties involved. There's Harkonnens or Harkonnens. There's just tons of other people. The one I'm thinking of now are Freemen, and they live in the desert. They really know how to live in the desert, and they don't need anybody else, and they have their own code. And when they're out in the desert, there's some things are shifting really quickly politically due to a battle, and the Freemen are like, "Are you with us or against us?" But they don't just say it. They talk in all these really weird, diagonal, askew ways of talking with the Atreides folks, such that they're not really talking directly to each other. So there's a big danger of misunderstanding. But at the end of it, they finally come to the conclusion: our water is your water, and once that happens, you're bonded. I don't know how much more I want to say about Dune. It is a long book, but it's very clear. It is interesting. It seems to lack humor. There doesn't seem to be a lot of humor in it. There's a lot of pathos, and I think it's pretty darn epic. One of the lessons I'm learning from it is that royal intrigue sucks, and I'm glad I'm not royalty, and you should be too. If you can't do, review.